So, hi, welcome. I'm so excited to see both of you together. I went back and I watched a video that you were actually talking about resilience, which I thought was really beautiful. And, but I listened to your story and you're talking about being okay.
Yeah.
And before you guys talked, I want to just say that my story of that last year was my year of feeling like being broken, but not actually.
Right.
When I went in for an endoscopy, Jules, I don't know if you heard this, but I came out and I was paralyzed. I couldn't move my limbs for like 53 hours. So in those early moments, not knowing if I would ever move again, I had kind of a similar kind of wake-up call.
Right.
To what's real and what isn't real, you know. And it was while I was in an MRI that I kind of really touched that space of being 100% okay no matter what happened.
Wow. Right.
You know, like if I never moved again, I was okay. And if I moved again, I was okay. But it was a spiritual okay.
Yeah.
It was like coming from somewhere else other than my identity or my personal body, or knowing I wasn't my body and I had a body and all that kind of stuff. And it was really quite amazing to like drift in that space. No pain was there in that moment either. And I had been in quite a lot of pain going into that whole procedure. So coming out of it with a spinal stroke, not knowing if I would ever move again, and just being okay. And then later that year, my brother died of cancer. And so not similar in any way, but again, I was in the room with him as he was passing, and I just knew he was okay.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You know, I just knew I had that knowing of understanding that the circumstances are what they are, but we're not our circumstances. We're not the things that seem like they're all heavy, and it was sad, and we all cried, and certainly appropriate for the moments when we feel those heavier emotions. But to also know that inside those heavier emotions, we have this resilience. Right. We have this ability to bounce back. We have this ability to know that we really are okay.
Right.
And that's kind of what I believe that we're all here for today, to really speak to that. And I would love to hear from both of you kind of your journey to this point, because I don't know how many of my viewers that will come later on and watch this have heard your stories and why this is so relevant to you right now, and where this has gotten you where you are today. And certainly the understanding that we all have makes it easier for us to know the deeper truth.
Right.
And so very, very pleased and thankful to have both of you with us. And now we have Catherine joining us. Hi, dear. So
hi,
I would love to go ahead.
Well, do you want to talk about your journey, Annie?
Yeah. Well, let's see. So I guess just talking about the connection with love that we all have, and sometimes that gets pinched off. I had experiences years ago. I was I was married, and then it didn't last very long, and 7 years, and I'm friends with him, so in case you're
that's good.
So anyway, but he met a beautiful girl, and I met somebody also who was pretty amazing, and my pretty amazing person got into a fatal car accident on his way to pick me up at the airport. And so I just pretty much didn't have this understanding, haven't connected, or didn't connect at the time, or maybe I did have glimpses of it, but still wasn't quite sure of that space, that innate intelligence that we all possess. And so I stayed single to protect myself thinking for about 6 years. And then my ex-husband called and said, you really need to get out there and mingle. Well, actually, he said, I'll take the girls if you want to go do something this weekend. And so I said, yeah, I'll pick up more hours at the hospital. And he's like, no, that's not what I mean. You got to get out there. So I did, but still not being in that space, connected with that space. It's always there, but just not having that trust. I chose somebody who I kind of chose him like a car. Like he didn't drink, didn't smoke, and had consistency within within his job for 10 years. And I thought, okay, he'll do. And that turned into a relationship that was had a little less life in it than my previous relationship. But a beautiful son came out of it. A beautiful little boy. Hi, Catherine. So anyway, so moving forward, I found myself being a single mom again for about through 3 children for about another 6 years. My son started to have difficulty going to school. He was in the process of getting diagnosed with autism, I believe. And then I found myself very, very unable to work. And I was living in a tent pretty much with my son. And with the hopes that I would make enough money. And what this tent site did is it enabled me to spend time with him. And he looked at it as, speaking of resilience, he looked at it as this was great. We were on the beach. It was warm out. We got to play outside and climb trees. But the state didn't think that. So anyway, so they came in and scooped him up. And then within a few short months after that, my 18-year-old daughter was in a fatal car accident. So, so that, however, prior to that, I found that space that you spoke of, and I really connected with it. When the state came and took my son, it was almost like they weren't doing something to me, and life wasn't happening to me. Life was just happening, and life was okay. He was with a beautiful family, and then got reconnected with his father, and which he hadn't been for 7 years. We didn't hear from him. So the state really, I think, created a situation that was so needed at that time. However, I could have looked at it with my old eyes and not seen that situation at all. And I allowed my son to go live with his dad. I fought, and then when Sophia was in transition from, I like to say transition from physical to non-physical, because her love is still very present, and she's not dead. She's not gone. I just wanted that same love for my son, and I wanted him to have a family that could provide, a 2-parent family that could provide, and have a roof over his head, and be able to go to school and know that, he doesn't have to come home to a babysitter. And so that's what happened. And I truly believe, like, when Rudi and I, Rudi came and videoed me, we fell in love, and now we're married. But thank you. But when Rudi and I have difficult moments, because I've experienced that space, or I've the space that we all possess, and I sat there for a little while. When we have difficult moments, if he wakes up cranky, I know that it's my state of mind, the way I view my relationship. If I view my relationship because Rudi's cranky as not a very good relationship, that is a mirror image of where I am. Because we're all going to have those experiences up and down. And true love, I believe, is is finding that space within and knowing that you're okay, excuse me, no matter what. And just knowing that, and I think the other day I said, Rudi, you're cranky again this morning. And, and he pointed out, he said, well, I think you are too, because, you know, he knows what he's talking about. And I thought, gosh, you know what? That's right. And so that was a trigger for me to go for a walk, take a bath, take a shower, get some food in my tummy, because I could be hangry. You've heard that term, hangry, not hungry, angry, hungry. Yeah. So yeah, and it just makes it makes our relationship real. And I think it allows us to feel safe within ourselves, to not have to put up a song and dance to please the other person, to just be who we are. And if that means we're in a low mood, then we're in a low mood. And if it means that we're super ecstatic and the other person's in a low mood, then so be it. But we're always going to be in that dance of life and love. And yeah, I don't know if that made any sense.
Yeah, I muted myself because I would have been moaning and groaning and, you know, talking while you're speaking. I had to be quiet, but yes, that was beautiful. What I was real curious about, though, is that, you know, we're talking about relationships. This is a group that I put together because I had an insight about love not too long ago, kind of in the midst of that MRI machine and being okay and all that. Really saw where love was, you know, that love is who we are. I mean, I've known that before I've talked about it. Sure, that's what love is about. But really feeling that from the depths of inside ourselves, that you can't get it from out there.
Right.
That it comes through us. It's part of who we are, you know, and our spiritualness, not our physicalness necessarily. But I had written something that I thought really exemplified it last year or so ago when I fell in love with somebody. I didn't really fall in love with him, but I had all those feelings come up around him. And what I saw was, it was like the love in me connects with the love in you. And together we're one love expressing itself. And it's like, if we're all that going on, then it really is all one, isn't it?
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
So we're only ever experiencing our own expression.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the thing about relationships, because you're not really having a relationship with your partner, being romantic partner, children, boss, friends, you know, whoever. You're literally living in the experience of your own feeling state.
Yeah.
You could call that moods or emotions or thought, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But that state of beingness that you're in is what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. So that state of beingness you take to a relationship, that's determining your reaction, not the other person. Because sometimes I can be cranky and Jules is fine, and other times she gets irritable back. Sometimes Jules is cranky and I'm fine, other times I get irritable back. It's just our own internal feeling state that's informing us and moving our actions, so to speak. So in a sense, yes, there are other physical people out there walking around in the world, and some of them we can call our friends or family, but it's really got nothing to do with them. You know, our experience is our experience.
Yeah.
They say that you're literally experiencing your thinking of another person, but I like to say that you're just experiencing the other person via your own state of beingness, really. And another word for state of beingness is your own resonance, you know, your own internal harmony, so to speak, your own music.
Yes.
And the music within yourself, it can kind of go out of key. It looks like people are putting your own music out of key, and you don't like the noise in your head. It goes from Beethoven to Iron Maiden in your head or something. but like it's still your music. And the potential is that, I mean, my first teacher, Dr. Roger Mills, really demonstrated this. This kind of middle-aged, greying psychologist walking around these really downtrodden, low-income communities and some of the poorest neighbourhoods in America, and not being affected by what was going on around him. Like, he was a master of his own energy, in a sense. He was a master of his own experience. No, maybe he's aware of where his experience was coming from, is probably a better way of saying it. But I know with Jules, like, sometimes, actually quite a lot of the time, I feel so much love for her that I don't know what to do with myself. I just have to tell her how much I love her all the time. And occasionally, it really looks like she's annoying me. And I have no love for her at all. I really do not feel loving towards her at all. I feel quite pissed off, quite angry. And the nice thing about, we've got this internal guidance system in here, it's our hearts. And if our hearts get closed, it's telling us we're out of alignment. And as our hearts expand, it's telling us we're back in alignment with our own internal song, because our own internal song is God's internal song, or the universe's, or mind, or please, whatever words you want to use, but it's that resonance, that song before the personal. It's before us. It's even before creation. Creation is an effect of this beforeness. So there's this beforeness resonance, this beforeness song. And when we're feeling loving, all that means is we're in resonance with what's true. And what's true is love. And so when I'm not feeling loving, and you can feel it, we can all feel it. I do my absolute best not to say anything, or have a difficult conversation, or take my thoughts too seriously. And it's funny, I often say to people, this understanding is this, the 3 principles is understanding the nature of human experience. Well, what I've come to realize now, it's that, but it's coming to ignore the human experience. You actually keep ignoring your head all the time, and again and again and again and again. In fact, the better you are ignoring your head, the more in touch with that love you are, that resonance that comes before, so to speak. And so, and I mean, I don't know, I've been around this about 14 years, and like every year I just get better at ignoring my head. And the more I ignore it, the more there's just that love, that mind, that force, that beforeness moving through me. And because it's the only thing that's actually true, there's more truth, so there's more love. Because love and truth is kind of the same thing, really. It's different words for the same thing. So the more in line with truth you are, the more loving you feel. And the more loving you feel, again, it's got nothing to do with anybody in your life, but boy, it's fun sharing it with other people in your life.
Quick question for you when you say that. When I'm in that space, kind of like that, what I call unconditional, universal kind of loving space, to me, it's kind of a feeling of neutrality. Is that something that you notice as well?
Yes.
Yeah, well, to me, love is neutral, meaning that love is a mind. Well, it's before the human mind, but let's just use word. Love is a human mind that is not judging, or creating to, or I'll be happy when, or I'll be happy if, or I'll love you if, when, and how. It's just loving. It has no conditions. And what neutrality is kind of unconditional. So this unconditionality, that's before humans running through humans. And you could definitely call that neutral. But the funny thing about the neutrality, it can sound clinical. I feel neutral about this topic. An impersonal or a universal version of neutrality for me is that loving feeling. And
yeah, I guess I meant without judgment more than
exactly.
else. Yeah.
So I agree with you.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Exactly that. It's I was just going to say that too. It's just when there's no judgment, there's no negative thoughts that we so easily and innocently start to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I noticed recently on this same idea, and as a couple, I'd love to hear your take on it, is when you drop expectations as well.
Yeah, like releasing any sort of, being attached to any sort of specific outcome.
Yeah.
And that brings you back to the here and now. That brings you back to you. It brings you back to that space within, that everything is okay and everything will always be okay. Because we are love.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I guess, I don't know, outcomes are kind of a condition again, you know, and leading a unconditional life is a life of love, and leading a conditional life is a life of judgment, fundamentally, because as soon as there's conditions, there's going to be judgments and wants and not quite right and whens again, and all of a sudden you're kind of lost in an illusion. Because again, to me, the only thing that's true, and when you strip away all manner of teachings, 3 principles, non-duality, mind technologies, religion, you throw it all away, all of that stuff is a man-made version of something that comes before anything to do with man or humankind. It's before us. But the usness starts creating languaging and definitions of this beforeness.
Right.
But when there's just the beforeness, to give it what I'm saying, some kind of context about love and relationships, is just very briefly, because it's like another world to me now, and I'm not really that interested, but I grew up in a very poisonous environment. There was lots of, I saw my dad try and stab my mum to death when I was very, very, very young. I remember being so terrified I couldn't scream when I was a youngster at night time. There was just a lot of this stuff going on. And as I got older, I channeled this aggression. I was brought up in a religious school, and so I blamed God, this thing, for why are you causing so much suffering, not just for me, but for all of my family members. There's so much dysfunction and depression and all the rest of it. So I thought, well, if there is a God, why are you doing this to our family? So I was furious with God. And so I channeled all this aggression out into athletics and sport, because I thought the one thing my dad taught me is I'm not going to be like him. So I'm going to use my physical body, but it's not going to be to harm anything. And so, but then I went to visit my sister, who'd kind of got out of it and immigrated to New Zealand, and my brother left the nest very, very young as well. There was just an experience where I went from being furious with God. I was kind of an atheist, but then I kind of wanted to believe in a God so I could blame him or her. It was sort of weird. So I was half atheist, half a believer, just so I could blame something. I don't know if that really... Maybe we should make up a word for that. So anyway, and then... So I was in New Zealand, I went backpacking by myself, and then all of a sudden there was just this experience where Rudi as an identity kind of dissolved, and there was just what was. And it's not that Rudi was having an experience, there was just an experience, and there wasn't a Rudi present.
Mm.
And there's lots of other things, lots of strange things that I won't talk about, because that's what it is. Multi-dimensions and portals, and anyway, that's another story. But the thing that the essence I got from that was, all of a sudden, it's not that I was filled, there was just this music before, there was this resonance within, there was this power, and it was benign. It was absolutely loving. It was love. The word love, or even the word universal love, pales in comparison when you try and define it.
Right.
It was this boundless, majestic, edgeless, fathomless love and majesty that I hadn't cried. I hadn't cried for like 10 years or something, because I was too strong to cry. I wouldn't let life get me down. And then I heard somebody crying, and I kind of popped back into this sense of a Rudi, and then I realised it was me. The love was so all-inspiring, my physical body couldn't actually take it. Then after then, I kind of realised that there isn't the God in the religious sense, but there is this field of intelligence, and it's love. And it's before mankind's attempts to describe it.
Yeah.
Before anything that could happen to anybody, it really isn't personal. So when you take that love within relationships, you have to give up wanting the other person to make you happy. You have to give up needing them to be this way or not that way. You just have to fall in love with yourself, which really has nothing to do with yourself. It's before the self. But the use of words, you fall in love with yourself, and then you carry that with you. And guess what? You then attract, like magnetically, people in resonance with you. And then you're not dependent on one another to be happy. There's just love.
Yeah.
And it's the most amazing relationship you can have. And it took me to 40, how old am I now? 47. So it took me till I was about 45 and a half to actually find somebody to share that with.
Well, you're very fortunate you did.
Yeah.
I'm 66 and I still haven't done that yet. However, I wanted to share a quick story with you, because it really illustrates what you're saying. Some of my group have heard it, but I don't think you two have heard it.
Okay.
But back in 90, my father passed in 94, and I had a lover who committed suicide in 96. And I was very connected to him on a very spiritual level. Our relationship was never going to work out, but there was something that was beyond the relationship that still had me attached to it long after he passed. And so somewhere, and this is not through principles, so forgive me for bringing this in, but I had a psychic medium that helped me, because I was really distraught. I was like 8 years going and still crying and still upset and still having stuff going on and dreams and all these other things. And eventually I had a spiritual experience with him that really highlighted exactly what you're saying. And one night he came to visit me. It was 8 years after he passed. You're talking about your daughter is still here. And this was like, for me, the exemplification of we are not ourselves, we aren't the form that we think we are, and all that other stuff. And he was sitting on my bed in lotus fashion. I didn't even know he could do that. Stark naked, but it wasn't sexual, which was interesting. And I wasn't even scared, and I had a sleep mask on. And I remember that I put my hand, I had a few things happen to me prior to knowing that he was there, but it was like, you talk about the frequencies and you talk about having that energy. It was like I could just feel a change in the room when I knew he was present. I didn't know at first it was him, but I knew that he was there. And I had this electrical stuff happening through my body. I was seeing bright chakra colors. My heartbeat had sped up. My body had gotten cold. And all of a sudden I heard his laugh. I hadn't heard his laugh for 8 years. And what was interesting was that he was saying, like, I came to give you reassurance, about the same time I was thanking him. In his world, it was like that. In my world, it was a year later.
Wow.
And so, which I think is interesting. But what happened in that moment that he lay on top of me, so I could feel a physical form, but it had no weight.
Yeah.
Which was a very interesting thing as well. And as I was running my hands up and down his body, that was when I had the experience like you're talking about, where it was almost like I left my own physical form and I became something so expansive and so beyond anything that has a human description. That was in a euphoric experience that was deeper or better, bigger than any love that I've ever known, but not personal.
Right.
Very, very impersonal.
Yes.
And it was so expansive and so huge that it was like the whole room was just filled with it. And I didn't even have eyes to see at that point. So it was just filling me, you know. And he was only there probably for a few seconds. But when he left, one of the things that I had always struggled with was fear of dying. And in that very moment of that connection, it was that just completely disappeared. Because I just saw how we're all connected. I felt how we're all connected. So how could we possibly hate one another when we're all part of the same thing? You know, it just didn't make any sense anymore. And I didn't have the understanding of the principles then. But then when I came into that understanding, it was like, now it all makes sense. You know? And I wrote my spiritual book really based on that. From the kind of the, like, looking from the inside out, so to speak. You know, how the soul looks through the eyes of our humanity, and then we have this dance. You know, and sometimes we have a lot of misunderstandings and we believe things that aren't true, and we get all caught up in the illusion of it. But when you get past and through all that, down to the very essence, that's where we're all connected. And that's what I see in the two of you, and that's why I wanted to bring you here today, because that's the essence of the reason why I put this group together. That at our very intimate self, inside who we are love. Yeah,
that's so beautiful. I love that story. When Rudi and I first met, I found myself, I like to call it word vomit because it just comes out, but I found myself just talking and talking. And I remember saying to him, Rudi, these are just earth rovers. We are spiritual, beautiful spiritual light beings that are having an earthly experience, and it's necessary for us to walk around in these clunky earth rovers. And after saying that, I thought, oh, he's gonna think I'm crazy. But bringing it back to three principles, I didn't have the principles until I met Rudi, and it sort of verified that I'm not crazy. It solidified that when I'm in that space of silence, when I'm in alignment and in touch with that innate intelligence, that I am okay. And this understanding is just so, it just puts words around the indescribable. And it just helps. It helps so much.
And I love the topic of this because love has no conditions. I mean, neutrality has no conditions. And so you can actually be okay even when you don't think you are, even when you don't feel you are. It's still okay. Because you can't break something that has no form.
Right.
And but you can, boy, can you think your way into that you are broken? Yes, so there's definitely the illusion of being broken, absolutely. But the fact is that you can't actually be broken. And again, an example of that is, this beautiful, strong woman here, she had her son taken away from her, beautiful young son taken away from a custody battle, and then her daughter physically passed away. That's two things that could break a person, but the spontaneous insight you had after Seth was taken away from you kind of resonated you with that frequency of love.
So then when Sophia transitioned from physical to non-physical, it's almost as though I felt her closer.
Yeah.
I felt her coming to me. And I was sitting in the front yard of my ex-husband and his wife's house, and people were crying and screaming and fainting. And then I was asking myself, why am I okay? What is this? And then I felt a closeness. I hadn't seen her for a few weeks. She was traveling, she was getting ready to go to university. And so I missed her. But then that missing was gone because I felt her so close. I still feel her.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
How you could have your daughter physically here, miss her, and then when she's not physically here, you stop missing her because you feel that she's close.
Oh, yeah, I felt her.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I was going to say earlier. Was, it's something that Sydney Banks really keeps pointing to over and over and over again. It's in the feeling.
Yeah.
It's a feeling that brings us close to the spiritual world.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I felt when Kim was on top of me.
Mm-hmm.
I had the feeling he wasn't saying anything. He wasn't holding or hugging me. It was all coming through me.
Right.
And that feeling was so huge and expansive and beyond words. It was, as you said, before the form, before the being coming or the creation, however you worded it. It was that feeling. And that feeling doesn't have words. It's not describable.
Yeah.
But the most we can do is to try to put words to the indescribable.
Right.
And that's all we've got. But that closeness that you're talking about, I've witnessed that for myself. I know what you're talking about. I've actually said to myself, I feel closer to him now that he's passed than I did when he was alive on this earth.
Yeah.
And he was a royal pain in the ass. He was. He called himself a bastard because that was the role he liked to play. He was going around being a man that liked a lot of different women, without telling everybody. Yeah. But that was the role he played. But in transition, he transitioned into a different space.
Yeah.
And I got to feel the true essence of him, not the illusion that he'd created.
He lost his Earth rover.
He lost his Earth rover. Good thing too.
Yeah.
Who needs that?
Yeah.
I'm going to use that. I love your Earth.
Good. Yes, please do.
Beautiful. But before I don't know where we are in time, but I wanted to open it up to the group. We have enough people here now. If anyone has a question for Rudi or Jules, would you please either raise your hand or unmute yourself? I would love to give you an opportunity to speak with them if you have something you'd like to ask.
All right, I'm gonna try and express this. Understanding the three principles for me has a lot in terms of relationship, let's say, but with anyone, but I'll talk about my husband. it's taken need out of the equation, right?
Mhm.
So I don't need him to be I don't need anyone to be any certain way to be okay, because I'm okay. I mean, I know this, I really feel it. But what I find strange is, let's say I experience a behavior that over time I still don't like. I mean, I haven't liked it from the get-go, and I still don't like it almost 30 years later. I don't need it to change anymore, which is great, because I need, I used to want it to change. Now I'm like, I'm fine, totally fine. But it's still there, hasn't changed, doesn't look as if it's going to change. And I don't know really how to, I hate to say how to, because no, it's not a how to, it's living that thing that hasn't changed and maybe won't change within the space of not needing it to change, but still would prefer it to change, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
How do we play with that? If you could speak a little to it, it might bring me some clarity. I don't know.
Well, when you listen to music, everyone's got different preferences of music. Some people love indie, some pop, some heavy metal, some grunge. Everyone's got different. Everyone can hear music, but you're going to have preferences on what kind of music you listen to. Mm-hmm. As spiritual beings and earth rovers, we too have preferences. There's nothing wrong with it. And someone can say, well, it's just your thinking. Well, yeah, but what isn't? It's all thought. So that doesn't really hold up, that argument. So you're going to have preferences, and you may prefer a partner to do A, B, and C rather than D, E, and F. And there's nothing wrong with it. And I think the more unconditional you become, the more you can just kind of tolerate or cope or let things go. But you're still going to have a preference. And maybe at some stage your preferences dissolve. I don't know. I personally haven't got there yet myself. But practically speaking, if there's a behaviour that you find difficult with, or maybe is unhealthy, there's nothing wrong with talking to your partner about it. Just because we can cope with something doesn't mean to say that we should or have to. So that's where the wisdom comes in. Mm-hmm. Wisdom isn't all about love and unconditionality. It's also about authenticity and honesty. And it's being able to have so-called difficult conversations, but from a different level of consciousness. Instead of coming in and saying, I don't know, I'll just use something stupid. You should wash your own socks. I hate washing your socks. Your socks are everywhere. Again, I'm just using a light example. You can go, honey, when you leave your socks everywhere, like, what's going on there, for example? Okay, these are just like I'm just kind of role playing here. But you can find that if you can pretty much talk about anything with your partner from a level of neutrality. And I know that my sister had such, oh God, I've mentioned her name now, I'm going to have to continue the story. My sister had so much difficulty with her partner, this is ages ago. Oh God. My sister had so much difficulty with her partner ages ago. It's like, do I stay with him and I go totally insane in my head? Or do I leave him and have some kind of peace? And so they broke up for a bit, and she was kind of mulling it over, and she realised she just needed to just love him as he was. And so they stayed together. And in that almost, I'm not going to say complete, but almost unconditionality that my sister had for my brother-in-law, my brother's actually changed, and he's a totally different person from who he was. Because love again, love is the only thing that's true, and love is the only thing that can transform anything. It's like a flower's closed in winter and it only opens with the radiance of the sun. Our conditioning, our programming, our fear can keep us tightly closed in relationships, but when the other partner's warmth of love and unconditionality starts spreading, it affects us. We can't help it. So again, we're going to have preferences, but the more in touch with what's true, what is love within our own hearts, there's a damn good fighting chance that the person that you're with can get more in alignment with that love too.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Love them as they are.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, just get a baseball bat.
Don't allow them to wear socks or move somewhere warm.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Does anyone else have something that they would like to comment or ask Rudi and Jules?
While they're contemplating, when Ivan, yeah, he turned his camera off, or I don't know what he did, but he had, because people wouldn't see this on the recording, but he had "I love you" like written on a bit of cardboard or something.
Love that.
It was really beautiful.
It was the perfect screensaver.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love you. That's right. That's
Cool.
good point. I thought that was his, what do you call it? Your avatar.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what shows up when you're not there.
Yeah.
Well, it is my avatar.
Ah!
I'm completely confident that we are from within love,
Mm-hmm.
unconditional love. I watched Sydney Banks today. I don't remember if it was his Hawaii lecture or his Long Beach lecture, and he said something in the way of that we are love.
Mm-hmm.
And that is mind uncontaminated with personal thought.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautifully said. Mm.
Yeah.
And I so believe that.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, I love that, Ivan, and also I just really wanted to say, in case I don't get a chance to say this, and please, if anyone else has something, I would love to hear you after I finish, but people can think, well, love is impractical. How can love help you? You know, you need to knuckle down, be practical, get things done. Love is the most proactive thing in the blooming universe, and it helps you. Like having the loss of your fiance, then your dad, then your stepdad, then your daughter, and then losing your son in the custody battle. Love is the thing that allowed Jules to surf through all of those things.
Mm.
Love is the thing that allowed forgiveness, not that I forgave, but forgiveness just to naturally arise with all of my past, and to let go of a lot of my programming and conditioning of negativity. It's before humans, and one thing that really struck me when I listened to Sydney Banks talk in London ages ago, he said, the formless takes care of the form. If you use thought at this level to change thought to that level, you just get more thought. When you skip in consciousness, this isn't even a problem. So it's a leap in consciousness, and that consciousness is love. Love is the most practical, helpful thing in the universe. In fact, it's the lack of love that causes all the problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the absence of all those contaminated thoughts, there is only love.
Right. And I believe
I have my background in IT. Back in, I started early 1980. And when the personal computer was introduced, IBM and so forth. And then there was a program, we can call it an app, called Sidekick. I don't know if anyone of you have heard of it, used it. It was a reference to the old Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the coaches traveling from city to city. There was the one who rode the horses and the one who sat beside. That was the sidekick to defend the coach. And this sidekick in the early 80s was a program that you can use to calculate, translate, whatever. It could help you in any way you wanted. And that's how I see my true essence, love. It's always my sidekick.
Oh, wow. Mm.
it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love that.
Nice. Thank you.
It's always there. Your sidekick is always there, isn't it?
Yes.
In everybody, it's always there.
Yes.
Sometimes it just gets pinched off a little bit, and that's your internal guidance system just telling you that you're out of alignment. That the side, just refer to the sidekick. Oh, it's beautiful.
Hey, you guys.
Hi.
Hi. I just want to take this chance to say hello. I'm not sure if I have a question, but really nice to listen to both of you. I've listened to both of you. I'm one of those, but I haven't spoken directly to either of you. So nice to see you here. Rudi, when you're talking about this love that we are, what comes to mind for me when you talk about how practical it is that there's a clarity behind this impersonal love.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to Sydney Banks say to someone that this feeling of love that he's talking about contains wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
It is wisdom. So it is, the wisdom and the love are one. And so in this beautiful way, when we fall into this place and out of our personal conditioned thinking, the beautiful practical clarity of, let's say if there's something to do, what to do next, can occur to us in such a beautiful way. And that is an expression of this love. And as I live my life more from that place, my love for other people becomes unconditional. And yet I take responsibility for what I expose myself to, or, in terms of other people's behavior, there's a clarity. Some people are very confused and are doing whether that's in my personal relationship or in the world at large, our wisdom is guiding us in really practical ways.
Yeah.
So our love is unconditional, and yet a lot of people are acting out of this crazy personal conditioned thinking. And in that confusion, we harm one another. So it's so beautiful to experience that this love that we're referring to, it's the divine, it's mind, it's that intelligence comes with it. It's like it is there. There's a clarity, and then you find yourself more gracefully navigating life and keeping yourself as safe as you'll ever need to be. If I'm not capable, this Land Rover, thank you, is going to fall away one day. I don't know how or when, but this love brings a clarity and it brings a wisdom with it. It's not the romantic love that's beautiful too. That's beautiful in its way. But this love that we're talking about that's universal brings such beautiful clarity. And as that love infuses my life, I have preferences still about what kind of behavior I expose myself to. But what I find is I can do that for myself in a much more lighthearted way. Mm-hmm. It's like, honey, I love you. I mean, my relationship is like night and day from, what it was 5 years ago. It's no longer, there's no project to try and fix him or fix myself, but we're really in this beautiful place of what can we create together? Mm-hmm. What can we create together that would feel supportive for each one of us? And so we're always exploring that, rather than trying to fix or change one another. And we make choices about the time we spend together, the time we decide we need apart, and all of that is coming from a place of I'll say more love and clarity. Not because, like, I might have a preference about these behaviors of yours, and so I'm going to choose to do. It'll become clear to me what I need to do about that. But the connection stays. But I might choose to remove myself physically from some sort of behavior that isn't feeling good for me at a particular time for whatever reason. So anyway, I'm rambling, but this understanding gives us it's all there. It's all there. The love we're talking about contains all the wisdom, contains all the clarity, it's just all there. There's nothing missing. And it's so beautiful to have that unfolding, to have the experience of that unfolding in our lives, and then to be sharing that with the world around us. So, anyway, it's great to be here with all of you.
That's beautiful.
That was exquisite.
Wow.
And also,
I think that's the first time I've heard Catherine speak too.
Yeah.
She blew me away as well.
Catherine, you mentioned the word.
If that made sense, I'm really glad, because it's just, it's just bubbling up listening to all of you. And it's like, oh, yeah, this love, that's blossoming in all of our lives, and this understanding. It's just, as that go ahead.
I grew up in a religion that's called that divine love and wisdom. And you so particularly and eloquently expressed what I grew up learning way before I ever heard about Swedenborg. I mean, Swedenborg is the man that was the religion I was in. I ever heard of Sydney Banks. I mean, I grew up with this understanding of divine love and wisdom. So that's exactly it. We have this innate intelligence that is suffused with divine love and wisdom. So when we fall into that, beautifully said.
Very beautiful.
And one thing, Catherine, you mentioned the word creation. You said creation once or twice when you were talking. I don't know if you remember, but also within love and clarity and wisdom. Mm-hmm. Because it is God, what does God, I'm just going to call it God, you know what I mean when I say God. Within God is creation.
Yeah.
And as we're in line with that resonance, with that universal, multiversal heartbeat, we're not just part of the whole, we are the whole in a part.
No.
So we too have the ability to create, and being in alignment with that creation, there's a recreation.
Yeah.
There's a recreation, and that recreation is just an evolution back home, back home, back home, back to love, back to love, back to love. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're doing a consciousness expansion program. Actually, you're the first people we've told about this. It's not up on our website yet, but we're going to be talking a lot about these kind of areas and about our powers within that field to create.
Beautiful.
And the non-physical.
The non-physical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm so pleased that that this group's really open and you discuss this stuff, Laurie. It's so beautiful. We feel really honoured that we're part of this conversation with you guys.
Yeah.
Well, I'm tickled that we've had it. I have Please come back.
Oh, yeah.
These are beautiful.
We'd love to.
Yeah. I have a massage client coming shortly, though.
Oh, no worries.
I'm gonna have to close it for now. But thank everybody that has been on this fabulous call. If you all want to unmute yourselves, just enough to say goodbye to everybody. I'm going to be ending the recording right now. But thanks so much, Rudi and Jules, for spending this wonderful hour with us.
Oh, it's our
thank
pleasure.
you. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much. Bye.
I love you.
Love you.
Love you too, Yvonne.